welcome back troops. It's been a while, but here we are on the 19th of July 2022. It's Tuesday, but what's unusual about it is the temperature. 36.1 degrees C, and this thermometer has been in the shade all day. 1:05 in the afternoon BST time, and I live in the northeast of the UK, not down south where it will be much hotter. And records in the UK were smashed yesterday, and there will be further smashed again today. So it's a good introduction to the video, but that is not what the video is about. The video is about the 5 C's of bushcraft and survival. So let's get straight to it. Right then troops, welcome back. As you can see, I'm dressed for the weather. This is damp. It keeps me tremendously cool. Stops your skin from drying out, getting burnt, all the rest of it. I'll leave the sunglasses on because I've got the sun right in my face. Right, so the 5 C's of survival and bushcraft. How did they come about? I've got no idea. Possibly David Canterbury had something to do with it. He mentions it a lot. I suggest you see what he's got to say about it. Short version, the 5 C's are, doesn't belong there, that doesn't belong there. We'll get to them later. So the 5 C's are cutting, not in any particular order, cutting, cover, cordage, containers and combustion, the means of combustion. So that's the short version. So anybody who wasn't sure what the 5 C's were, doesn't need to know any more, you can clock off now. For the rest of you, I'll continue and go through them in a little more detail. So I've just got a very small selection of cutting implements here that I might take out with me under various circumstances. For those of you who are new to bushcraft, you can't get much better than a basic Mora knife. They're cheap, they will definitely do the job, they're definitely robust, and if you don't know what to get a Mora as a bushcraft knife. When you get a little bit more experienced, you'll want a little pocket knife with you maybe, especially as I live in the UK, so these two knives are legal carry. I don't have to explain myself with these two knives. These knives I would have to explain myself, but when you get a little bit more experienced, you try a few different knives for different jobs, and you might start buying them from knife makers, supporting knife makers, the skills, and eventually you'll realise what skill it takes to make these knives. These two knives here, and many more I've got which I haven't got out, and I haven't got out my main bushcraft knife, were made by Manticore Knives, and he makes some splendid knives. And this is his t-shirt. He also makes the tools to make knives as well, so he deserves a mention. But a multi-tool, and in this country if that multi-tool has got a locking blade, then you better have a good excuse for carrying it with you. And this is the Leatherman Wave, and I'm not going to embarrass myself by showing you that blade is locked in, but it's got tools on it, and with tools you can make stuff. So I like to, if I'm going out doing any serious bushcraft, I would probably have that with me. What I would definitely have with me is a saw, a small saw, and you get silky saws, but this is the cheaper, and it's red hot. Metal I can hardly touch, plastic I can just about bear. Did I mention we're having the hottest day ever in the UK, ever recorded, and that'll be down to global warming. But anyway, you can do a lot with a saw that you can't do with, or would take you an awful long time and not do as good a job with a knife. Same with an axe. Axes have their places, but you've got to consider, is it worth the weight? But anyway, it's a cutting tool, and if you had nothing else, then an axe is a good thing to have. And this is a homemade Stony Age, well, it's not Stone Age, is it? Because it's got a metal head, but traditional homemade axe, bound with it would be bound with sinew, but I've had to use rawhide, and I've had to use rawhide that was off a dog chew. And in this temperature, the pitch pine resin is just like pudding. We're only talking about the 5C's, but 5C's are important, but you might want other stuff with you, like a first aid kit. If you've got a first aid kit, it's very handy to have some scissors in it. You can do a lot with scissors, as we will come to in a moment. And that sometimes takes some secateurs, because a lot of the paths I go down now are so poorly used that if we don't go down them for a couple of weeks, they're overgrown. Right, so we'll come on to cover now. And cover, if you want to rush out and buy something expensive, then something like a DD tarp, 3 metres by 3 metres or 10 feet by 10 feet. But if you don't want to spend that sort of money, you can cheap little tarp just to knock up the shelter from the sun or from the rain or the hailstones. And this is a tarp I've made myself out of the ground sheet of a tent. So that's come out of the ground sheet of a tent, and all I've fixed the ends with is, I don't know whether you can see it on here, I've gone round some of the edges with tape, duct tape, and it's lasted a couple of years so far, so I can't complain. But if I'm out hiking and I'm expecting to be out most of the day, and I might not get back till fairly late, there's always the possibility that there's some sort of incident and you have to stay out overnight. So what I'll take with me in that case is just a Gore-Tex bivvy bag, and I could get into that, stay out overnight and come back the next day. No big dramas, no big dramas. Right, so going with your cover, you could also include in your cover as well. I might put this back on because it's going to stop me from sweating, because it's damp, it's cotton and it's damp, so it's keeping my head, it's keeping the sun off, and also the evaporation is keeping me cool. So although it looks as though I've got my head wrapped up, I'm actually cooler. But I'm going to take it off because you might not be able to hear properly what I say. So, cover. Which brings us nicely onto cordage. Now, most people will think cordage, paracord. And you can't go far wrong with paracord. It's not too bulky, but it's strong. It's got internal fibres in it, which you could use if you had a needle, or could make a needle. You could use those internal fibres to stick a button on or what have you, and you can tie decent knots with it, and more importantly you can recover it, you can get those knots out, whereas with bank line, good luck getting the knots out. But bank line definitely has its place, but paracord is the cordage to be recommended. But you're walking along, you pass a building site, there's plenty of this stuff, plenty of that, and just seal the ends so it doesn't fray, because it really has a habit of fraying, and you've got some fairly strong, decent, free cordage. Same with the old washing lines, they're not very strong, really light though, really light. And then, well, before we get on to that, a bit of climbing rope I like to take with me sometimes if there's a few of us out, and you might be traversing some difficult terrain. You might want in the group, one person, carry a coil of climbing rope, bit of climbing rope, very strong. But again, think sideways. I would include tape, gaffer tape, and although the Gorilla tape, the Gorilla tape is fantastic, but I find it too thick, so you don't get as much for the weight. This stuff is not as durable or as strong, but how long do you want it to last? So it's what you can carry with you. You've got balance carrying stuff. I was in the military and we used to carry heavy packs for lots of different reasons. I mean, there's a lot of kit we had to carry, but you really don't want to be carrying too much weight. You don't want to be carrying more weight than you can comfortably. You don't want to be knackered the next day, do you? So little rolls of tape as well, and that comes in your first aid kit. Stick that in your first aid kit. Right, cordage, think sideways. You might be thinking, well, I could make some. Well, I made this. It's out of nettles. It took me ages to make that. And it's strong, but it's not that strong. It's not that strong. So, you know, you might be better off taking your jumper to pieces. So that's cordage. Lots of little bits of cordage, tape as cordage. One more thing that you might not consider as cordage, elastic bands. And it's got a dual purpose, because you can use that to start your fire with. Which brings us nicely on to the last, no, one more item. If you've got your first aid kit with scissors in it, cordage is covered, providing you can find a plastic bottle. And then you can make cordage, and it's fairly strong cordage as well. Actually, I was testing how strong it was and I broke it, did snap it. I don't know where the other half is now. Anyway, I did snap it, but it is quite strong. And you might have to modify the knots you use with it as well, because it is a tape and not a round cordage. So oh, that's containers. So next one, container. Now if you've got no container, you've only got to look around. The dog picks one of these up every day, and I carry it to the nearest bin and stick it in the bin. So container, plastic. For a plastic container, might be alright for carrying your water in. You get water bottles for that as well. It might be alright for carrying your water in. And you can boil water in a plastic bottle if you keep it moving, but it's not to be recommended. If you had to sterilise some water, I pass a stream when I'm out on a morning with the dog, and times of year like this it has the slight sniff of sewerage about it, so you wouldn't want to drink that water. But if you were desperate and you had some similar water, you'd really want to boil it first. And yes, boiling it in plastic is not a good idea, but dying's not a good idea. So you might need to boil your water in a plastic water bottle. But that makes you think, doesn't it? Don't have a plastic water bottle, and I haven't got one here. I haven't got a metal container, but I can improvise. I've got a can here. I can boil water in that. I can boil and cook in my Crusader cup, steel cup with a heavy lid. Put a lid on it, makes it boil a lot faster. Although these lids are heavy, that's why they call it heavy cover. And you can, and I have done it many times, boil water in a glass bottle, but just bring it to heat slowly. Don't thermally shock the glass. After all, this glass had to be molten to form that bottle, so you can get this boiling no problem at all, as long as you do it slowly and don't then go pouring freezing cold water in it. So there's containers. So the next one, combustion. Now if you're going to be out, like I'm out with the dog on a morning, and you think you might want to have a breakfast while you're out, a boiled egg, a cup of tea, there's no reason not to take either a box of matches, or a bit lighter. But most of us who like to practice bushcraft as a bit of a hobby will at least have a Ferrocerium rod and a striker. Now let's just see what happens. Okay, I don't know whether you can see that, but it's throwing sparks. You can't see these sparks very well in this ferocious sunlight. So that's a bushcraft method, and it's very robust. These matches have been out for quite a few days now, and they've got wet, and the safety matches, and they've got wet and they've dried out and they don't strike very well anymore. So Ferrocerium rod copes with that nicely. Your lighter, store your lighter so that the gas can't come out. I usually wrap an elastic band around that valve section there, and I don't know whether you can see, but that's lighting okay. It's still a light there. There are certain conditions where it's difficult to use your lighter, so practice with a lighter, practice with your matches, because you don't, under a stressful situation, you don't want to be thinking, I know I can start a fire with the stuff I can make with my knife and find in the woods. Yes, as bushcrafters we can all do that with a bow drill set, and I've got a bow drill set here. There's my bow, cordage, so I needed cordage. Your nettle cordage just is not going to hack it on a bow drill. Bearing block, half board and spindle, and I could get a fire going with that, I guarantee, in this weather. I guarantee it in this weather. But the energy you use making all this stuff, that's assuming you can find the right woods and it's not pouring with rain. So don't rely on being able to go out and find the stuff to make fires. There are loads of different ways to make fires. There are loads. I've covered them in previous videos. But why not, for emergency sake, take something simple? And why not, for emergency sake, we all have as well our little fire kits. Why not, for emergency sake, not take with us a little bottle of something flammable, so that fires, once you get that that ember into flame or whatever, you've got something, you've got some fuel that you can immediately feed that flame with. So if all your tinder's damp, your birch bark you've collected and your fungus you've collected, it's damp, you can get that fluid in there, get it alight and dry it off. So that is the 5C's, and it's just a means of remembering the important items of bushcraft, so you can go out there and you can enjoy your bushcraft because you've got the tools to do the job. You cannot always rely on finding what you need, and the one thing you have not got in a survival situation, and this is why they call it a survival situation, because a survival situation by its very definition is a situation you may not survive. So just make life as easy, or at least as safe as you possibly can, because otherwise, and I have experience of events I've done where I have sat back and considered that if I carried on the way I was going, the law of averages says my luck was going to run out. So be careful, and well, I hope you learned something. I hope I had it on record. Oh no. Just to finish off then, with the wind picking up, it's what, 20 past 3 in the afternoon, and that's about when the temperature peaks, and it's a nice steady 36.8 in the shade with a breeze. So Records will have been broken in the UK. We're in the northeast where it won't be as hot as it has been in some places.